Hi, I'm Brandt Passalacqua, Director of Breathing Deeply Yoga Therapy, and I am here today with Melissa Russell, who is a CIAYT yoga therapist, and she has produced a course for our wellness platform on Yoga Nidra for trauma. And so we're going to talk for a few minutes about what that is and how it can help people. So thanks for being here, Melissa.
Thank you, Brand. It's nice to be here.
Oh, I didn't mention in the intro that you're a graduate of the Breathing Deeply Yoga Therapy School, which is probably relevant in terms of how we know each other. So you recorded this course for us, and it's based on a practice called Yoga Nidra. So for people listening, can you describe what Yoga Nidra is?
Sure. Yoga Nidra is a practice. It comes from the yoga tradition, and it has two parts, yoga and nidra. So you might translate that as yogic sleep. One of the amazing things about yoga nidra is it brings our body into a state of rest, of healing. And it is a practice that's done lying down or sitting up or really walking even for some people. But it's a practice where you listen to a number of prompts. In the case of my course, those prompts are led by me. And you're going to have an experience that brings you into a more parasympathetic state.
So parasympathetic state is a state of your nervous system that's more in the rest and relaxed zone, correct?
There's fight or flight, which is also a state of the nervous system. Yoga Nidra helps us rest into the rest and digest state.
And my experience doing it and teaching it is that not everyone, but most people find this easy. And I would say easier than many other forms of meditation in some ways. Would you agree with that?
Yes, with a few caveats that most people, you don't have to be someone who practices yoga to do a yoga nidra. You don't have to be a long-time meditator, or really someone who's interested in meditation. You simply have to be willing to take some time for yourself, which is hard for some people, and listen to some prompts. And as you mentioned, the difference between classic meditation practice, however you want to define that, and a yoga nidra is that you're led through a number of prompts continually. There are moments of silence, of resting into the practice, but you are led through a number of prompts. And there are many different ways of doing yoga nidra and many different prompts that are used by different people who teach them.
But some examples would be like scanning your body or watching your breath or thinking
Yeah.
certain thoughts or images, and it can all sorts of things like that. Yeah. And you wanted to do this course for people that have suffered, that have had trauma in their life and possibly PTSD. And maybe you could just tell people listening, like how this practice might help them with that. Because if I put myself into beginner's mind, I'm like, oh, that is not obvious how that would help that coming out of nowhere.
For some people, as you mentioned, yoga nidra practice is easier than sitting in silence, right? You might think of a meditation practice as having a lot of just sitting for 20 minutes in silence. That's not always true, but some people think of it that way. And yoga nidra, as we talked about, has these prompts through it. And with people with trauma or have had traumatic experiences, having these different pieces of the yoga nidra practice, for example, the body scan that you mentioned, it helps people to connect with physical sensation. So by scanning your body, feeling your nose, your fingertips, your toes, you connect with sensations in your body. And sometimes people are disconnected with those sensations. So by connecting with those sensations, you become more aware when your sympathetic nervous system is starting to go into action, that fight or flight. So you might know ahead of time, like, oh, I need to take a moment from this situation, or I need to rest, or I might need to just stop back and be silent. So you become more attuned to sensations in your body. There's some breath sensing in a yoga nidra practice, and the breath sensing portion, where we pay attention to our breath, is where we might tune into noticing what happens to our breath as in the yoga nidra practice. But then when we take that out into the world, we notice what happens with our breath when we're going through the world. And we might notice that our breath starts to quicken, or we might really be breathing into our chest. And then we can say, oh, maybe I need to step back, right? And take a moment, observe what's going on, feel my feet on the floor, whatever it is. But you begin to notice things about what's going on with you. And in the deepest way, you're connecting to yourself, right? So we connect more deeply to ourselves, to our experience, and it gives us more space in our lives and more freedom.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because it might not be obvious that like this noticing would have profound effects. But my experience with it has been that not only people notice that their breath is changing, but their mind notices even before they consciously notice, and they start having different experiences in the world where their PTSD symptoms might be inhibiting certain behaviors or making their life challenging mentally, and that gets reduced. And in my practice, people are often shocked because they're like, okay, I lie down and listen to a bunch of instructions every day for 26 minutes. And now it's 6 weeks later and I'm walking through the world and whatever, I'm 30% less affected by my symptoms. So I could imagine how someone would be like, does that really work? But I do know that there's been some studies done on it particularly by iRest, which is a foundation that runs Yoga Nidra seminars and clinics all over the place and trains people. And they had a really good study, right, on veterans. You familiar
Yes.
with that study?
Yes, it's pretty amazing because for many yoga practices, it's really hard to get research done and to find real research to show how effective yoga is for people. And I love that IRES did this research on Yoga Nidra used in a veterans hospital and was able to really show the effects that Yoga Nidra has on people who have had trauma. And I love what you mentioned about people might not even notice cognitively what's happening because it's not something you have to work at after you do the Yoga Nidra in class, right? Or if you're practicing at home, being led by someone, you're able to do the practice. And then sometimes 6 weeks later, as you said, you're just noticing that walking through the world is easily. And IREST found that through their research with veterans. And the cool thing about that research is that IREST thought that there would be some resistance to it, or that people wouldn't want to lay down and rest, or that the practice would be difficult. And they started with one class and ended up teaching like 10 at that same hospital because it became such a popular offering.
Yeah, because it's easy and it works. There's not so many things like that in the world. And in my practice and at our school, for 20 years, I've been watching people use this practice for trauma with really stunning results. When I first started, I was shocked, actually, that people would come in and they'd have multiple things they wanted to work on in a yoga therapy context, and they'd share their trauma history. And a very large percentage of people, when they do this practice regularly, really report a huge reduction in their symptoms and a huge increase in their quality of life. So it's quite something. Maybe you could give just a quick synopsis, because we keep saying it's easy, but you made a course. It's a very simple, elegant little course, I would call it, on this subject. And I believe it has like maybe 5 kind of main things you do build, right, from video to video. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that and what someone could expect if they started doing these videos.
Yeah, I love that question because in my experience working with people in groups and individually with Yoga Nidra, sometimes they need to be offered it in pieces. So it sounds easy to lay down and notice different sensations in your body. But if you haven't done that before, it might be something that brings up trauma or brings up boredom or brings up itchiness, whatever it is. It sounds like it should be easy, but it is not easy for everyone. So what the course does is it offers a bite. So there's 6 lessons, and each lesson offers like a little short practice to get you started. So for example, the body scan practice, the first thing we do is just feel our hands. So for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, we just feel the sensations of our hand. Notice how that feels. We might practice that for a week or so, and then we move into the longer body scan. So we're piecing together these practices. So that's what happens in the first lesson. And then once you're comfortable with that, so I'm okay now with feeling my hands, the body scan, then we add on noticing the breath. And we'll do a little practice, something called stair-step breath. And we'll get used to that practice. And then we'll weave that in to the body scan practice. So then you'll be doing a body scan and you'll be doing a little breath sensing. So we grow the practice through 6 different lessons.
Yeah. And then as you make your way through it, you get benefits. And then when you're through it, you have this nice yoga nidra practice you can take with you forever. One of the things I like about the platform we've developed is that you can also talk to a yoga therapist about it. So you're not just, you watch these videos, but if you have questions, or a lot of times when people are working with trauma and this, they'll be like, oh, I had this sensation. I'm not sure if it's safe. I don't know if this is the right thing that I'm feeling. So it's really helpful to talk to somebody, even just for a few minutes, and get some feedback on that. And I know that you're planning to be there live sometimes, and I'm in there live sometimes. We have some other yoga therapists. So that's available to everyone who's listening. What do you think, just lastly, I know what I've seen in my practice, but what do you think someone who, is thinking about doing this, maybe, they have a trauma history and they're looking for tools and they come across this, what's the promise? What's the promise of if you do this yoga nidra practice for trauma, what might happen? What's the possible results?
I think the possible results are having more, I sometimes describe it as a space in your life. We often walk through the world, especially when we have a history of trauma, kind of reactive to the world, right? The world can be stimulating. There are people in it. There's work in it. There's pets in it. There are animals, right? There are all these things that we come across that might be activating. And for many people with trauma, they feel a little out of control of their experience. And by practicing yoga nidra, connecting more closely to yourself, you build more kind of space for everything to pass through your experience. You also may find a more sense of a grounding, feeling your feet on the floor, feeling a connection to the earth, finding more resilience, more clarity, making really everything in life more easy and joyful.
That's what we all want. I was going to end it there, but I should also say that these techniques help with a lot of different things and create a lot of joy and space in a lot of people's lives. I'm so glad this course is here. And I just want to say Melissa's an excellent yoga therapist. I've had the privilege of working with her. And I think if you're looking for some guidance around this, would be a great place to put some time into for sure. And I'm just going to end this by giving Yoga Nidra a ringing endorsement because it is actually the practice that saved my life. So I'm a huge fan. And I see why you're a huge fan too. So if you want to find Melissa, you can find her in our wellness platform at breathingdeeply.com/wellness. And if you have any questions, you can contact us in all the ways. But thank you, Melissa. I'm so happy you did this course, and I'm so happy you're doing this amazing work in the world. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandt.